Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode of the Diary of a CMO. Today, I have with me an incredible guest. I was saying to her just before we hit record or play or whatever, I was saying to her that I'm going to try to hide my, excitement, because I'm a big fan and try to have as constructive a conversation as possible. I will try. I will try. Intermittently, you will find me grinning. For those of you who would watch this, you will find me grinning from ear to ear. From ear to ear. Just please allow me. I have today on the podcast Dawn Rowland. Dawn is the CEO, Sub-Saharan Africa for Denstu. I'm going to allow Dawn do a bit more intro in terms of who she is, and for those who are meeting her for the first time, how she would love to introduce herself. Again, this is going to be one of those episodes where there's going to be a lot of quotables. There's going to be a lot of clips. There's going to be a lot of. I mean, I'm excited about this, and I'm looking forward to it. So, Don, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. Thank you. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I love being here.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, for those who are meeting you for the first time, how would you like to introduce yourself? I like to say that when this introduction is being done, it captures a bit of your. Kenzie laughed at me on one of the episodes we had when I said an origin story. Like I was sounding like a proper marketing person, capturing sort of how you started out, professionally, professional wise, and then where you are today, and what happens in the near future. Over to you, Don.
So I have been in the industry for quite some time. I won't tell you how long, but I'm sure if you can do the math, you'll figure it out. I'm a relentless innovator, and also a relentless entrepreneur. I've built 3 businesses in my career. I'm also a wife. I have an amazing husband. We celebrated our 29th anniversary yesterday. And I'm a mother of 2 amazing boys, grown-up boys. And I'm a wine lover. I study wine part-time. And I'm not a very happy camper. I don't like camping or anything. I like the outdoors, but I do like sleeping under the stars, the 5 stars. So that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic.
I think just certainly from a career perspective, people know me as somebody who has been very entrepreneurial in our industry. And I'm not one of those people that has shifted from industry to industry. I've been as I said, relentlessly pursuing innovation in one, which is the advertising and marketing and media industry.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that intro. So I'm going to take a guess. Since you kind of already put me to the test, I'm going to take a quick guess. I would say that you've been in the industry for, if my maths is not off, it's about 30 odd something years.
30 something, yes. So I actually started off when I was quite young, because I finished school when I was quite young, and literally chose this career by looking in a job recruitment section of a newspaper when newspapers were still a thing, and looking at what the highest paid roles were. Because I didn't want to be a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer. And I saw marketing director and I thought, that pays quite well. And I read the job description, and I remember walking out and saying to my dad, I think I'm going to be a marketing director. And he was like, oh, okay. So that's how I decided. I looked at the potential, earning potential, of
Wow.
all the roles in the industry. But I also looked at the photographs of the people who were marketing directors who had just been promoted or appointed. And I noticed that some of them were women. And I realized that this was potentially a career that would be accepting of a woman in a senior role.
That's incredible, actually. That's incredible.
My
That's
father
incredible
said, I think,
because,
no, but in those days it was, my father said, I think you should be a dentist. You could kind of work half day if you think you want to have children. I was like, what? So it was
oh my
it was a
goodness.
very different time. It was a very
Right,
different time.
right,
Women
right.
didn't really
Interesting.
think about careers in those days.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean, I find it really interesting because some of the conversations I wanted to have with you was obviously representation in leadership within the industry or broader world that
Mm.
we live in today. So I find it very fascinating that one of the things that got you interested in industry was to see some level of representation. Not to
Mm.
mention, obviously, the earning potential. Let's not get into that. So, so I think that a very good place to start would be to kind of ask, because one of the most fascinating things I saw in my conversation with Kenzie, CMO at Nedbank, she
Mm.
became a marketing director at 25. You
Yes.
became a media director of the third largest agency in SA at that time at 26. That is wild. What was that like? And what would you say made that possible?
So I think firstly, just goals and ambitions, blind goals and ambitions. I wanted to be a media director by the time I was 25, and I missed it by 1 year. I was totally and utterly unprepared. I stepped into this role in a merged company. I had to retrench 20 people. One person
Wow.
was someone who'd actually trained me in the industry. I think I cried every day for about a month. It was just
Wow.
hell. It was hellish. There was a huge demand on my level of origination. I had to come up with a whole new proposition for this merged agency. I had to figure out very quickly who the best talent were. Clients were literally firing the agency daily. It was hell. It was a year of hell, but I
Wow.
I, I stuck it out
Wow.
and learned a lot.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild. What got you through that? At 20, let me try to remember what I was doing at 25. Just give me a quick second here. Um I can't remember if I was doing anything meaningful at 25, if I'll be honest with you. But I'm just curious, like, as hellish as you described it to be, what got you through it? What got you through it and obviously succeed at it?
Well, it's that kind of thing when work is when you love what you do, it's a passion,
Right,
and when you
right.
hate what you do, it's stress. So I have never taken a job besides me looking at the job to see what the biggest earning potential is. I've never moved into a role for money, never, not once. And I've only ever moved for learning potential. And what I kept telling myself is
Wow,
this is what you wanted, and you need to make a success of this, or you will forever feel disappointed in yourself. So I've never
wow,
looked to, have outside recognition or admiration. It's been more about how I feel about myself and whether I feel proud
wow,
of what I've achieved and done. So I was
wow,
like, look, you
wow.
wanted
That's
this. Now
incredible.
you need to make it happen.
That's incredible.
And I
That's
relied
incredible.
very heavily on a few key people that I had met in the industry. I built up a advisory council around myself as well to get the right kind of advice to succeed.
Oh boy. Wow. I think it's really fascinating just to kind of hear you and what you experienced at such an early age or early stage of your career, what that was like. I'm again and kind of speaking about family and daddy suggesting dentistry or becoming a dentist. What are those things when it comes to family in terms of like growing up and how that sort of influenced the kind of person you are? Maybe not career, because I mean we've heard what daddy suggested, but just the kind of person you are
Hmm.
overall. How do you think family and growing up sort of influenced the kind of woman or professional that you are?
So I came from a very sort of middle class family. Um, my parents were not wealthy. I paid for my own studies. I worked in a restaurant. I was a waitress. Um, my parents were quite tough, actually. Often if I came to them with a problem, they would say, "Well, I'm not here to solve your problems for you. Fight your own fights." So I think that taught me very quickly how to be self-reliant. But I think a key pivotal kind of influence on my life is that my mother died when I was 14. And I had a sister who was 6 years younger than me. So
Oh
I
wow.
very quickly
Wow.
had to grow up
Wow.
um, and kind of help my sister through that. But I also realized that life is pretty short, and I think that's part of that driving and relentless pursuit of goals is
Wow.
possibly because I realized how short life can be. And I guess I felt like I didn't really want to miss out on anything.
Wow. Wow. I mean, first off, you got me at the waitress, and then also obviously,
I
mom's.
was an excellent waitress. I
I mean,
always sold a side.
I'm still stuck back there, Dawn. I'm stuck back there at the waitress one. But then speaking about mom passing, that kind of shook me out of it. I think these kinds of stories and these kinds of vulnerability is definitely needed, especially in today's world where everything is, for lack of better word, sort of augmented, with some filter and the kind of stories people want to tell on social
Mm,
media, etc., etc. So these kinds of authentic, vulnerable stories, definitely very useful, especially for younger generation, to be able to pick up some nuggets here and there. I mean, to kind of hear that you had to pay yourself through some level of education, looking out for your younger one, and having to sort of adult a lot faster than maybe you would have,
mm.
is definitely a lesson to walk away with, and it's incredible. And if nobody has told you, I hope somebody has been telling you. You turned out amazing, Dawn. You turned out amazing.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of take it up a notch a little bit. You have held a number of marketing leadership positions, for a while, for a long time actually. And leadership position, and you have succeeded wildly at it. From all of what you've done with Densu, obviously with your team and your partners, setting up shop in multiple markets, all of these really, really amazing things. I definitely would like to know what you would consider, for lack of a better phrase, your secret source to such an impressive career. How have you been able to accomplish this? I dare say consistently for a pretty long time. How have you been able to do that?
So I think the biggest sort of driver of success is dedication. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Hard work.
Right.
In an industry as competitive as this, or any industry, you can only hire people that are 10% smarter than the average, or they start becoming a little strange. And you can only work people 10% harder or 20% harder. So the reality is that if you hire really smart people and you inspire them to be dedicated, you will always win, because somebody who does something in the absence of nothing, or when there's nothing, will always succeed. It might not be the right thing. And yes, sometimes people are lucky, but luck certainly doesn't account for just dedication. I think in terms of the secret sauce, I would say building relationships, trusted relationships. If people know you have their back, that you will always work through a problem with them to find a solution, that you will support them to deliver on that. Trust, earning the right to be trusted, is probably one of the most important things that anybody who embarks on a career in any field needs to consider. And I think if people trust you based on your commitment and dedication and problem-solving capability, it overcomes many cultural differences. Because in order to solve problems, you really need to understand the problem, right? You need to fall in love with the problem, essentially, to find the right solution. And when you do that together, you build trust across cultural boundaries. I mean, I'm certainly not what a CEO in Nigeria expected to meet. I mean, I had, after one meeting with a top CEO in Nigeria, who said, wow, I'm just wondering where you would have been if you were a man. And he meant it as a compliment. But I'm not what they expected. But they very quickly respected me, because very quickly people look beyond race, gender, background when you deliver.
Wow, Dawn. I mean, sometimes it's really, sometimes it's really shocking the level of oblivion, that people have, when it comes to certain types of certain conversations and certain points of view, if I may put it that way. But again, I guess that's the responsibility that we have, especially as leaders within the space, to continue to change the narrative. To change the narrative, so that the guys who are coming after this will have to deal with less. Will have to deal with less.
I'm sure they'll deal with different challenges. Each generation has their own challenges. And every single one of us looks to our parents to say, well, geez, look how you messed the world up. Each generation will have their own set of challenges.
I agree. Kind of still talking about like performance. I mean, Denstu, like, come on, it's I don't know, 10 market startups, over 23 local partners, not to mention the acquisitions, and then of course the shelf overflowing with awards, all types of awards. Please, like, and I think you'd written like from 40 to 1,500 team members. I'm sure that number has been updated by now. But like
Hmm.
Densu, how did that happen in such a relatively, I dare say, not so long time?
It's not an overnight success, and definitely we've definitely look, the business is successful because it has a very clear vision and proposition. It's attracted
Right,
amazing partners who share the vision and the ethics of the business and have the same
right,
level of commitment and dedication. So I think that's really the
right,
secret sauce behind Denstu. I think
right, right,
um, it's very difficult um, to enter a region and try
mm,
and make a success in every single market at once. So in
right,
some countries, it took us 8 years to make a profit. In
right.
markets like Kenya, we invested for 8 years. Our biggest competitor was 80% market share. In
Wow.
some meetings that I had initially with people in Kenya, they would just go home. You can't compete here.
Wow.
Um, and you also have to realize that success takes time and it takes investment. It's not luck. And I think also just making very considered decisions by country based on the opportunities there, what people were actually looking for, the problems that our clients needed to solve,
Right,
um, and being very agile about how you surround that problem. I spoke earlier about falling in love with a problem, like
right,
really understanding what the challenges are and how you are uniquely positioned to solve those problems for clients is
right,
critical. Um, and sometimes you don't have a strong enough proposition in your arsenal in one area, but you may have it in another area. Um, and you deploy that because it builds trust. And then slowly you begin to add to that. So in some countries, we went to market with a number of propositions at once, and in others, we were very selective and painstaking, at huge pain to keep growing margin in a really difficult conditions. And then also some
right,
countries are way more open and accepting to startups and entrepreneurial businesses. Some of the
right.
East African markets, it is really, really difficult to set up a
Mm,
business. It's the environment is not conducive to startups.
right,
So
right,
those are kind of like the macro challenges that you deal with. Doesn't matter how good you are
right.
or how fantastic your team
Exactly,
is. If it's
exactly,
going to take you 5 years to get a withholding tax license in like Uganda, for
exactly,
example, you
exactly.
know, you you have all of those challenges.
I wanted to pick up the conversation from the CMO report, which I had a pleasure of having a look at, and I think some of the things there they definitely resonate, especially again when you judge by the source of, I mean, like in terms of the data that was used to curate the report itself. But I wanted to get your take, for
Yeah.
those who are listening to me and are wondering what is the Itaya talking about. There's a CMO report published by Denstu Creative. Maybe Dawn can talk about that a little bit, and then we can go into
Mm,
which one of those trends or insights stand out the most for you. I know
mm,
the one that stands out the most for me, and not the typical one, that a lot of people might expect. But I wanted to hear from you, first of all, about the report, and then again, which one of those big insights stand out
mm.
for you.
So the report is basically compiled by speaking to CMOs around the world about what keeps them awake at night, and just getting a bit of a litmus test on where the industry is, where the industry is going. The last report was done just as we were heading into COVID, and so it is very interesting to see. The last major report was done just before we headed into COVID. And then we do track some of these trends year on year to actually see what changes there are. And the report shows challenges that marketers are facing. And please go on to the Denstu Creative site, have a look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll see where you can download the report. And I don't want to give too much away because you really should read the whole thing. It's really fantastic. But one of the key things that really stood out for me was the fact that literally in 12 months, you can see a massive shift in acceptance around the usage of AI. And fact that AI is no longer seen as a competitor to human intelligence and creativity, but that it is seen as an enhancing tool or product, which for me was really fantastic. The fact that CMOs, we always talk about insight and how that leads to solutions. Most business owners are lying awake at night thinking about the things that you need a kind of a North Star of where you're going, but then you also need the radar so you don't fall in any holes. Most CMOs are lying awake at night not really knowing where those potholes are. And that radar looks quite blank and very busy, lots of noise. So a lot of CMOs are looking for foresight versus insight. So a lot of the questions that we get are, well, where's this actually going? What are the 3 things I should really worry about? And most of these CMOs, I think it was about 79% of them, actually find the sheer volume of data that they need to digest and rationalize incredibly challenging. But I think for me, what was the most interesting thing here is just the share of voice to share of culture. And the fact that as a CMO, you cannot control that. Essentially, culture and fandoms exist. You essentially integrating yourself into them, and you can't necessarily always control that. So a very interesting, very scary time for a lot of CMOs who, let's be honest, in most cases, CEOs rely on as their foresight. Understanding how to get close to customers. So there's a lot of pressure on CMOs. So which one was your most interesting one?
To be honest with you, it was the shift from share of voice to share of culture as well. I mean, I've always been like this, like that. Literally is my it's my thesis for brand marketing. Like that literally it drives from a professional standpoint in terms of what I do outside of the podcast, of course, is like that literally summarizes my thesis in terms of how brands can approach brand building or brand marketing, and it was very exciting to read in greater detail the perspective of the team that put the report together. So that's our plug. That's our plug for Denstu Creative CMO reports. Please go to please go to Dawn's profile. You can download the link from there. While you're at that, also follow Dawn Rowland on LinkedIn. I'm sorry, now I'm just waffling on. So speaking of AI though,
Wow. Okay.
speaking of AI, I mean I also noticed there's an active there are active steps that your team is taking in that direction. I know you had a workshop recently as well. What is driving this intentional initiative for Denstu, and what are the objectives? What are the expected outcome of this initiative for you?
So I think, firstly, to just really understand what AI is,
Right.
and secondly, how it actually will impact our business and businesses in general.
Right.
There are a lot of advertising networks talking about, oh, we've invested 3 billion and, whatever. I mean, the reality is that there are two types of AI. One is an embedded AI and the other is an applied AI. The embedded AI is sitting in products that you and I use every single day.
Right.
Our clients use every day. Consumers use them every day. And working with those companies is really critical because essentially they're going to predetermine how culture and content escalates and what the rapid development of that is, right? So Denstu is way ahead of our competitors in the embedded AI space, just because of our high-level partnerships globally with platforms. And that goes beyond just spend levels. It goes right the way through to how we co-invest with them on products. I think that gives me a huge sense of confidence in that as a company, we're not going to be left behind, and that our staff are already utilizing embedded AI with actually not even realizing it, right? And what that's driving is a level of efficiency and, to be honest, just happier people, because when you're hiring the best, smartest, kind of ambitious talent, what you don't want them to do is spend their time on admin.
Right.
You want them to spend their time on thinking, ideating, immersing themselves in client problems and solving those, right? Because that's what makes us famous, and that's what drives the bottom line. So the embedded AI side is very important, but the applied AI is a space where you need to test and learn. And we made a conscious decision 18 months ago to launch at least 4 products a year as Denstu that solve client problems, and worked out how to go to market with that, how we drive the partnerships with the big media platforms, and then also how that drives an advantage for clients.
Right.
And so last year we launched, in the second half of last year, we launched 2 products. One of which was solving a very real product for the South African industry, which was load shedding and the lack of electricity.
Right.
And how that impacts media.
Interesting.
So we created a product called Night Vision.
Okay.
We've actually recreated that product in Nigeria that has very similar challenges, but in a very different way. Okay. So when we look at any product, we look at what the scalability of that is across our region. And many people believe that Africa is incredibly data poor. It's not true. There's a great deal of data out there that can be utilized in a very constructive manner if you just approach it correctly. So that's why when we look at embedded AI and we look at applied AI, we have a very different set of we have a very different approach. So on the embedded side, it's about investing in the platforms, being the most qualified. Right now, we're I think we actually are the most qualified media agency from a Google perspective. So it's really making those conscious choices. And then from an applied side, it's rapid development, from ideation into production, test and learn, and then roll out. So speed's important when you start looking at the applied side, because you really need to know whether products are not going to work, whether it's going to work or not. So you have to test it. You have to have a brave client that will test it with you.
Right.
So that's been our approach, and that's what we will continue to do. We just recently announced a big tie-up with a South African telco, where we are enhancing their data with our own data proposition in our product called Mercury. So we'll have 21 million unique IDs in South Africa sitting in that proposition. Wow. And that is really, the aim of that is to enhance our clients' audiences and to make the advertising more effective. So that's sort of on the media side. And we will we'll continue to launch products off of the back of that.
Wow. That's a lot of work going on in that space. And there's no doubt how that sort of differentiates the business from the pack. Speaking of, I mean,
you can't say you can't say we know people better or we understand culture unless you actually have the capability to analyze data at scale, right? And that's one of the key challenges that marketers are facing. So you have to make an investment in really understanding people in order to flywheel ideation.
Wow. Analyzing, you cannot say that you understand culture or you understand people if you are unable to analyze behavioral data at scale
in real time.
Okay, that's definitely quotable. I mean, I'm sure you notice I have my own pen here. I'm not just like I tell.
This is a recording. We're in 2024.
I apologize. I apologize. I'm old school like that, especially because it allows me think. It allows me think in the moment.
Pen.
So, right. So speaking of, I mean, you've spoken about talent a number of times on this call. Attracting the right people, having the right partners, talent. And one of the challenges that I've seen in recent times, at least within sort of like Nigerian and West African markets, is this sort of what's the word? I don't want to say lack of.
Japa.
Well, there's say that again.
Japa.
Say that again. Say that again.
Japa.
Oh my goodness.
Where people are literally.
Dawn, let me just tell you. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Sorry. I'm going to cut out that clip, and you are about to find your voice on every meme that has anything to do with. Yeah, go on. You wanted to say something.
You know that we had the same thing in South Africa, and there used to be a meme about it. Was the last person left in South Africa, please remember to turn the lights off. So I think countries go through talent drains, right, where people want to move faster and they assume that they can move faster if they have foreign experience. I mean, I worked in the UK for 2 years myself.
Right.
And I think it comes from a space that we have insecurity about our capability. So we assume that anything from outside of our region or our country is better than what we have locally.
Right.
And as you extend your field of influence or you extend your level of exposure, what you realize is that sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it is true in certain areas, and sometimes it's not true.
Right.
Exposure to international markets has become easier just because of the world we live in today.
Absolutely.
So if you are an ambitious person and relentlessly driven around innovation, you will seek that out no matter where you are. in terms of the talent drain, it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
But we're also living in countries made up of young people. We have 20 interns coming into South Africa a year in just one division. Wow. We have a school of influence with another 20 people that come in every single year from a credit. So I would say in South Africa, we're probably looking at about 80 people a year. Nigeria is probably about 30. Wow. Kenya slightly less. But there is talent. And those young people are incredible because they start adding value very, very quickly. They provocate people that have been in the business for a long time. So you get a double kind of whammy. But also they get us to think differently. And if we give them the time and we give them the opportunity to actually play a vital role in the business, it makes a massive difference. What you'd be interested to know is in Nigeria, we built the business with maybe 5 senior people. We did not steal or attract talent from other companies. We home grew our talent for the first 3 years.
Wow.
It was tough.
Yeah.
So, many of those people are in very senior positions in the business today.
Right.
South Africa, the same thing. Many of our MDs came in by internships, 10 years ago, or people in general manager positions came in by internships. Right. So you have to make a conscious decision to invest in your talent. That's thing of there is no talent, or it's true for everybody. You have to grow the talent. Right. And there's no shortcut because essentially you can go and hire people from other agencies or other businesses. But there's a good likelihood that they'll only be with you for 2 years as well.
Right. Right.
So it's not easy, but there's the talent exists. Right. It's just exposure and investment in those people.
Right. I completely agree with you.
There's no shortage of smart, hardworking people, trust me.
I completely agree with you in terms of, sort of like an internal sort of home-growing talent within the business. And sort of these people now occupying the leadership roles a few years down the line. I think that's definitely one of the ways that, in terms of even my experience in a little way, that really is what has worked to, like you did say, it's very difficult, it's very time consuming sometimes, but again, there's no shortcut to it. You have to.
It takes energy. Yeah.
So, I think as we start to wind things down, I wanted to just take it down a notch. Now, just tell me about this thing with you and wine. First of all, Dawn, where did this love for this wine love, where did it come from? And just give us a little bit of that side of Dawn in terms of what you're doing in that space.
So where did it start?
Oh my God.
I've always drunk wine. I've always been interested in what it tasted like and actually where it was from. And then obviously traveling widely, I would sample wines from local countries and want to know more. And then in COVID, everybody was studying German or doing another degree. And I was like, wow, I'm a loser. Why am I not studying something? So I decided I was going to study wine.
Interesting.
So I signed up for a course that I thought was like a wine club, where you just drink wine and talk nonsense. And then on the first lecture, realized that actually I had to write an exam and a blind tasting exam. So
Boy.
I was like, oh, well, I've already paid, so I guess I better just. And it literally just went from there. And I will be honest with you, it's quite a lot of studying.
Wow.
And the blind tasting part is actually very difficult. Like, and I'm not particularly good at that because I like to taste a lot. But it's tough. It's really hard.
Wow.
It's not
Wow.
easy, but it's really interesting to understand how wine and culture and food are totally related. You know, you could be in Italy eating the most amazing risotto, and you could be having a certain wine and it tastes incredible, and you buy that bottle of wine and you get back to wherever you're going home, and it definitely doesn't taste like it did in the moment eating that food
Right.
in that
Right. I
sunlight.
get you.
So wine is very much about associations, culture, food, environment, marketing. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for marketing scarcity. You know, that's how the French have managed to dominate the
Right.
champagne and cognac industry for so many years.
Interesting.
So it's a very interesting space.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I do drink some wine from time to time. I probably have a few bottles somewhere in the house. But I'm more of a single malt whiskey kind of guy. I think my wife, on the other hand, is more
So
of
which single malt do you
try
like?
to taste this and taste that and taste. Oh, definitely. Used to be. Right now, I am on Jameson right now because they've done a really good job of influencing the markets in this part of the continent. Um, yeah, so do a bit of that most times straight, preferably. Um, no, I mean, if you're judging me listening to this podcast, I don't mind. So
No, I'm not judging. Well, I am judging. I am judging you slightly because I do
because,
think that Jameson's is a very very high quality product.
so
It's also very easy to drink
so this is the thing. Let me give you a bit of a
versus some of
backstory.
those Scottish single malts.
Let me give you a bit of a backstory. So I used to be a straight up Hennessy guy, and interestingly, when I started my career within, advertising or marketing services, um, even till date, Moet Hennessy is a client I have worked with the longest. So I think cumulatively, I've worked on those brands for I'd say maybe about 12 years cumulatively. And then when we had to move on from the account, we then brought in Pernod Ricard. Now, bringing in Pernod Ricard again within the Nigerian market is how I kind of fell in love with, Jameson, Black Barrel. And since then, I just haven't looked back. I'm sure I have maybe one or two bottles in the house as well with that. So hopefully, I don't
See,
change anytime soon.
this is definitely this is definitely the curse of working in advertising.
Right.
I've worked, I think, on every single alcohol brand available. And I actually used to be a whiskey educator.
Wow.
So that's why I asked you which single
Oh,
malts.
wow.
And if you've worked on Scottish brands, the Scots believe that the Irish certainly are they're certainly not as proficient in whiskey making
Interesting.
as the Scots.
Interesting.
It's actually a very interesting story because if you go and look at where whiskey production came from, most of the distilleries were illicit, and many of them run by women because,
Oh, wow.
in many cases, Scottish men were killed in wars. So many of them were run by women. They were illicit. They used to transport whiskey to avoid British tax and excise in coffins. Blending whiskey only became kind of fashionable in the early 1900s.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting industry and business that came out of a real kind of struggle mentality.
Wow.
And also, obviously, the Scots believe that they invented whiskey. And so if you're ever in Scotland and say that you drink whiskey and happen to mention that it's Jameson's, they'll probably fall over laughing. But certainly Jameson's market share and the fact that it's able to recruit so many new whiskey drinkers.
I needed some tips. I know you have two amazing boys. I've got one boy and I've got two beautiful girls, and that's on the side of parenting. I wanted to get some tips from you on how to parent, right? And then I think I remember you saying you've been married for about 29 years. I'm just 8 years in. So I wanted to pick your brain. What are the nuggets you can give me on the marriage side and also on the parenting side?
Okay. Let's start with the parenting side. I think that's the easier side.
Okay.
So what advice would I have for a father of daughters? Is that I would teach your daughters to be resilient and self-reliant. Many women believe that to be completed, they need to be married, someone needs to take care of them, they need to be provided, they need to be carers. Teach your daughter to be a provider for herself and her children. So I think teaching daughters self-reliance and self-worth is the most important thing. And then teaching boys how to be self-sufficient. My boys can pack a dishwasher, vacuum a floor. They can also be incredibly, they're also very gentlemanly and respectful. So I think teaching your children self-reliance, whether they're a boy or a girl, is really, really critical. But I think as a father of boys, you don't realize, I grew up in a family of girls, so I didn't know how tough it was for young men. But giving men confidence and teaching them to be respectful of women and of them, and of themselves, is critical. There's a lot of kind of toxic traits that young boys have. And I think it can be really tough for boys. I don't think people necessarily pay enough attention to that. Which is why there's so many, young men who don't know how to manage their own emotions. So being a parent is tough, but the best thing about being a parent is how your kids keep you in check. When you're just getting a little too big for your boots, they know how to pull you back in line. And they give you a great sense of honesty, and I've definitely enjoyed every moment of it. And then being a wife or a husband, I think the key to any happy relationship is partnership, earning trust every day. It's exactly the same as being in business. And really being clear about expectations and making sure that those expectations of each other are fair because most relationships fail due to unmet, unrealistic expectations.
Right.
So yeah, just respect partnership and ongoing dialogue.
Wow.
But also you've got to be with someone you really like, and
Okay.
you know that
Okay.
you
Okay.
you know you've I mean, you know,
Yeah, I get you.
you can't necessarily be around someone you really don't like.
I get you. I get you.
That doesn't work
I get you. We're not
at
going to
all.
we're not going to get into your love story and how you met your husband. Not for this episode. Maybe another episode.
No. Actually, it's actually a work-related love story.
Are you
He was
serious?
my client.
Oh wow, he was your
He
client.
was my client.
Oh wow, Dawn. I'm judging you. I'm judging you. I'm judging you.
He was actually one of my clients, but I didn't work with him directly at the time. He was a client of the agencies.
Got it. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. All right, Dawn. It's been an incredible time. I have, I have spent too much time. I wish we could keep going. Because obviously I really wanted you to speak on the what I titled the fundamentals of media, especially from the African perspective, in terms of what those new fundamentals are. If you could just quickly in about a minute or two, just breeze through that before we shut this down.
Sure. So I think what we're seeing at the moment, and it's moving very quickly, is that trend that everybody's been talking about in terms of moving towards the more digital media environments and space.
Right.
We suddenly seeing that coming through very, very strongly certainly in markets like Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya. That was slower initially to move into that space are literally like whip-tailing into that space.
Right.
I think with that comes a lot of the anxieties that we spoke about in the CMO report.
Right.
In terms of just how to deal with this, how to build brands in digital environments, how to own culture or have a share of culture in a digital environment and space.
Right.
And I think what is playing a massive role in that is the understanding of the media platforms that where these cultures are being built.
Right.
And that goes beyond just advertising on Meta or TikTok or Google, but into the actual structure of the technology of those platforms and how to be creative and to build brands in that space. So for me, media fundamentals now are about understanding integration of creativity, media, and technology, and how that builds that share of culture. And to do that, you really do need to understand the technology a lot better than you had to understand, a 30-second television commercial.
Right.
And that's not to say that, there aren't still things that people will do differently in television advertising going forward, but just the sheer speed at which technology is moving in these more social media platforms or even retail media, for example, and how that is all connected and very transparent and highly accountable.
Right.
So our industry is moving into a stage of real accountability that it's never really had before.
Right.
And I think that's gonna be one of the biggest fundamentals is ideate, understand, ideate, create, check.
Interesting.
Go back. Understand.
Right.
Ideate, produce, check.
Right.
So, how do you close that full loop?
Right.
And drive accountability.
Right. Thank you very much. On that note,
it's a pleasure.
It's been an incredible pleasure. I mean, this recording, this podcast, this episode is everything I imagine it would be, in terms of the in terms of the breadth of the conversations. In terms of the breadth of the conversations we would have. It was very exciting, it was fun, it was insightful.
Thank you.
There's a lot of quotables, there's a lot that we can definitely on our side be able to sort of stretch and distribute the content my ambition is that we are able to
Just
create
remember
this.
to black out. Just
I
remember
will.
to
I
black
will.
out that one comment.
I will, Dawn.
Oh.
Dawn, this is my closing. This is my closing. This is my closing. My closing
Mm.
should be uninterrupted.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my goodness. Oh boy, thank you so much, Dawn. I had an incredible time. I hope and really, really hope
It's
that
a
I'm able to get you
pleasure.
back sometime soon. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have an amazing time, and I wish you
Thank
well
you.
for yourself personally, for the team at Denstu, for everyone else that makes all of the magic
Thank
you guys
you.
make in there. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.